Hey everybody on YouTube. Today I thought I'd take out another moment to do a Q&A or answer your questions. I've been getting a lot of emails from a lot of people who are watching my video repair demonstration videos, and I want to thank everybody. It's really overwhelming how many people out there are just, they're trying to repair stuff and they don't understand how involved it really is. And I'm just trying to help people out to give them an idea that this is not easy work. If you're an electronics technician, it might be a little easier for you, but for the average Joe or the average person at home, this is not easy work. And you need to know what you're buying, the type of stuff that you're using. A lot of people don't know about quality in parts. When you're buying electronic parts, you really need to stick to high quality stuff, especially when you're repairing a lot of vintage reel-to-reel video machines, three-quarter machines, Betacam SP machines, anything that's vintage electronics that's got to do with video equipment. You really got to pay attention to the replacement parts you're using. You never want to skimp on using cheap quality parts. I'm sure a lot of people out there have got flat screen TVs, and after a while you can't turn them on anymore. And the reason for that is because a lot of the TVs have what they call parts that are made in Indonesia, very cheap ass parts that they use in these TV sets, and they don't last very long. Well, that's a very good example of why, when you have electronics and the electronic type of electronic that you're using fails because of bad cheap parts after a period of time, or that it's a very old piece of equipment, you want to use some good quality replacement parts. So today we're going to talk about quality replacement parts, things that I've noticed in repairing these vintage video machines. It's amazing by the solutions I've been coming up with fixing my equipment. I swear my equipment is at the high standard of level of production quality. It's ridiculous with what I do and the difference it makes by doing it the way I do it. I don't skip on spending money on parts. I really go out of my way to get high quality parts for repairs that I do. Alright, well, we're going to take a few minutes here to show you some examples of pictures and answer questions people have been asking me. So let's get right into it. A lot of people have been asking me about capacitors. Okay. And they're asking me, does it really matter what type of capacitor you use? Yeah, it does. It matters very much on the type of capacitors that you use. People got to be very aware that you got what's called good quality high-end capacitors, you got what's called middle range or in the middle type capacitors, and then you got what's called cheap-ass capacitors. I mean, Indonesia, places that manufacture these overseas use really cheap quality capacitors we call garbage capacitors. You want to avoid using those if you're doing any restoration or repair job to vintage video electronics. So I want to point out the difference in capacitors. People ask me, what do you prefer to use capacitor when you're buying capacitors? What types do you use? Are you spending a lot of money on them? Yeah, the question or the answer is I spend a lot of money on capacitors. I do not use cheap-ass capacitors in any of my equipment. I use either, in my opinion, I prefer to use either the Panasonic ESR capacitors. Those are what you call high quality, low noise quality capacitors. These are exceptional capacitors you use for vintage electronics. Or I use what's called Sprague capacitors, which is another very high quality capacitor that's made in the United States that I prefer to use as well. I do not deviate from that. I use either high quality Panasonic or Sprague. I will not use cheap ass capacitors. So here's some pictures you're looking at right now of what's called the gold series, the gold series of Panasonic capacitors. I recommend these highly. They're extremely high quality. They are high quality, everlasting under high temperatures, under load. They don't fail. I mean, they really are high quality capacitors. So if you're doing vintage electronic restoration, use Panasonic ESR capacitors. They kick royal ass. They really do. Or you can use the Sprague replacement capacitors. Those kick ass too. They are very high quality. Again, either Sprague or Panasonic ESR low noise capacitors. Those are the ones I recommend. Those are the ones I use. So if you're doing really good quality repair work, I suggest you stick to buying those. And yes, they're very expensive. You're going to pay a pretty good penny to buy a good quantity of them, but you get what you pay for. So, I mean, I pay the money for getting good quality components. Okay, now we're going to move on to a point I want to make on these reel-to-reel video machines. A lot of these reel-to-reel video machines, including three-quarter U-matic machines, use these what they call early chip ICs. In this picture, you'll see there's an orange type, in the picture, and then you got a green type. Okay, a green type IC that they made was the tail end of the IC replacement, which they made, which was better quality. They actually put the transistors and resistors on the chip before they dipped it in the green coating, which made them very, very good, high-quality ICs, sort of like the black ones you see on modern components. But the orange ones, I want to point out, were used in a lot of the reel-to-reel and U-matic machines of the 70s and early 80s, and these suckers would fail all the time because they used what they called a porcelain type of polymer type of thing, where they actually binded the actual material to make the IC onto an actual square type of plate type of thing. And it wasn't really good quality material that they used. It was an early attempt of an IC. I recommend, if you're going to replace these when you do restoration jobs like I do on reel-to-reel machines and three-quarter U-matic machines, you use the green high-quality ones. I mean, I have parted the green type of IC out of many, many units, so I've got a really good supply of those. They are not easy to find. The green quality ones are the ones you should replace especially on the record and playback boards and the servo section of these boards. These are the type of ICs you should use. Use the green quality ones if you can find them. Do not use the orange replacements, and most likely if you're rebuilding an EIJ or a three-quarter machine, you'll probably end up finding out those are no good and you do need to change them. So I wanted to point that out. So if you guys are doing any three-quarter or EIJ half-inch replacement repairs, you want to change these early ICs that they use, the orange jobbers to the green ones. You might be able to try to find them on earlier machines. I scrap out a lot of machines and take all the best components out of them. So I do have a very big supply of these, but I'm going to let you know if you got a machine that's not working properly, make sure to check those orange ICs. It's a very big problem on these machines. Okay, I also wanted to point out too, a lot of people have been asking me about resistor replacements. Okay, I use the standard carbon film resistors, but like I keep telling people, I buy in bulk in large quantities, big packages of resistors, so I have a lot of resistors on hand. I do swap out a lot of resistors and transistors and capacitors on my rebuilds when I'm rebuilding circuit boards for these machines. I don't like using early old components that we used on these. It defeats the purpose, because if you put new stuff in and all of a sudden you start having issues, it's usually because the old components are starting to fail because of the load of the new components that you swapped out. They didn't have very high efficiency ratings on the very early components of the time. So yeah, I recommend if you're going to rebuild and you have time to do it like I do, swap out all the resistors as well. It's not that expensive. If you buy resistors in bulk like I do, I get them in packs of 35 for like $2, and that's 35 resistors of a particular value. I mean, I have resistors up to yin yang, and I spend $30 on resistors, and they last me for a while. So yeah, if you're going to replace resistors, buy them in bulk like you see in this picture. I usually get them in 35 pieces per quantity. And so the point is, people, if you're going to rebuild any early electronic vintage machines, do it the correct way. Do it the way I do it. Replace it with high quality components. So you basically have a brand new machine when you're done. And if you've got a lot of big projects, video transfers you need to do, you have access to machines that will not fail and will do a good job for you. So if you have any questions about components or what to use or how to do it, or where to find parts, you might have something on a board that you're not too sure what it is, drop me an email and I'll be glad to answer any of your questions. Hope you enjoyed this video.